Finally, we get to start. How's everybody doing this afternoon? Wonderful, wonderful. Let's get to it. What do you think of when you hear the name Vince Lombardi?
Great quotes.
Okay, we're zeroing in on it. Do you think of that first Sunday in February where a winning team holds up the trophy by his name?
Super Bowl.
Thank you. Maybe do you think about that coach going up and down the sidelines at the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field when he was coaching the Green Bay Packers to all those championships? I don't. I think about the Vince Lombardi who was on the assistant staff with the New York Giants, who, when he wanted the head coaching position, they thought, you just don't quite have what we want in a head coach. So the Green Bay Packers offered him that head coaching position, and he shuffled off to Green Bay, and as they say, the rest is history. But what he did was, he had a theory of taking the most gifted athletes in the NFL, bringing them back down to the basics, and then building them back up again. Not that we need it as Toastmasters, but it would be nice to do that journey and see how it goes. He took some tough guys like Ray Nitschke, Max McGee, and he said, get down into your playing position. And they went like this, and he walked over and he kicked the arm out in front of him, oh, face in the mud. He says, look at you guys, you're not even balanced properly. You want to play professional football. They went to the basics and started all over again. So let's all of us take a trip down to the basics, except it's hot in here and something doesn't seem right. Something needs to, if I'm going to profess, I should look a little more scholarly, shouldn't I? Let's go. Let's put this on. Now I feel more the part. Now I feel more like a scholar. How's that? Is that a little better? Perhaps a little bit opulent? That was our word of the day at our last meeting.
I've never seen you. All I've seen is that building before. You're always so professional.
It could use a little irony.
That will have to be for the fall conference. I want to talk to you about putting speeches together and how, just like putting an essay together, we have our opening, we have our body, and our closing. And I came up with an acronym called RAP, R-A-P, not the dance, R. I want you to reel them in. Have a very strong opening statement that gets the audience going. I want you to have A for appearance and P for either posture and or poise. Because too often I see people slipping a little bit on the poise and in the appearance. Too often I see people cradling the lectern, and when they do this, what happens? You close off your windpipe. When you stand up tall, you just automatically speak clearer. You sound so much better. When I was a kid, every day after dinner, I'd run upstairs to the one remaining black and white TV in our house, and I would watch Rod Serling. We know Rod Serling? Excellent, excellent. Rod Serling would come on there, he'd take a puff of a cigarette, and he's a veteran, by the way. Take a puff of a cigarette and say, you're traveling through another dimension in time, not only of sight and sound, but of mind and body. A wondrous journey whose boundaries are that of imagination. You were about to enter the
Twilight Zone.
And the music that goes. What he did was he opened up the show for his audience every time. He had about 5 or 6 different openings that he did. He would switch. He'd go to commercial and come back. Hello, come on in. He'd come back and set up the premise specifically for that show. Nathan Bledsoe, a down-and-out crook, and then you go into this person's life. You would see a fantastic episode that would make you think and feel things you never thought you could think and feel. And then he would wrap it up perfectly. He would say, so Nathan Bledsoe did this, this, and that, and he found himself on a one-way course to the capital of the Twilight Zone. It always wrapped up nicely. What I've seen as an evaluator, and what I failed at by people who've evaluated me, is I don't always tie in that opening with the same exit. It's very easy to think you have it on track and to mess it up. And I've done that a number of times, because some of the evaluations I've got before I got things straightened out was, well, you kind of started out talking about this, then when you wrapped it up, you brought up these points here, and I had to bring them together, just like my buddy Russ Sermon. To give you a short, quick example of how to mess that up, as she mentioned, I'm an avid scuba diver. If I gave a speech on the basics of scuba diving, I'm basically going to talk to you about pressure groups and depth and some very basic equipment. And I'll talk to you about it and say it's great. And if I wrap up the speech with how much fun it is to go shipwreck diving, I've broken my speech. Yes, shipwreck diving has to do with scuba diving, but it didn't fit in with the topic being the very basics of pressure groups, depth, and the basic equipment. However, if I chose to leave them wanting more, and I wrapped up the speech properly with such things as, so these are pressure groups, this is the equipment you'll need. However, once you master the basics, then we can talk about shipwreck diving on another time. And then you lead them into another topic. And you see how you get it together that way. Now, I want to talk to you about the body of the speech. Is a couple of strong points that I want you to follow is, I've seen a lot of people mess up, for lack of a better term, the chronology of their speech. Have you seen that happen?
Yeah.
A really wonderful topic, and it's just not in order. So unless you're Quentin Tarantino, who did Pulp Fiction, he's a master of skipping around in the story to get you to feel and think a certain way, and he comes from. Setting aside his theory and ways of doing it, let's just put Quentin Tarantino to the side, to work on the chronology. If you see somebody doing a speech on, say, for instance, the joy of their hometown, they had a really wonderful hometown, and they start the story about their high school prom, and then they talk about when they were 6 years old, they were in a kid's pageant, and then they talk about in junior high, they got this great bicycle, and then they talk about, you want to bring that full straight through in the chronology, and then it smooths very easily into the conclusion, which again you want to tie into your opening. A couple other things I say. By the way, you have homework assignments here. You can't leave the room until you pick them up on the way out. Have you ever seen somebody come up for a speech and they grab this perfect Word document, you could see it in their hand, perfect paragraphs, perfect Times Roman numerals, and it's stapled together, and you're thinking to yourself, my God, is this person going to read to us? Is this actually going to happen? And they never do. I'd seen it happen once in an Air Force speech. It wasn't a Toastmaster, and I said, the person actually tried to sit there and read a speech. We could talk about war is hell. So many people, especially new, come up there and put this whole thing, and then they give a wonderful speech. And they, how is the tie-in and the connection in that? I say that it's a security blanket. They have their whole speech, everything they're going to say on 3 or 4 sheets of paper on a Word document. And I have to believe it's there in case they lose their spot. It's sad to see, but let's just show your hand. Sir, how are you? Has anybody seen somebody lose their spot in a speech? It's unfortunate, it happens. I've come real close a couple times, and I'll tell you how I got around it. The worst example I ever saw of that was a target speaker at an evaluation contest. Oh my God. And I said, I got to hear how the evaluators handled this one, because it was, I felt bad for the guy. The guy, he's a great speaker, he'd been in Toastmaster a while, and I felt so bad for the guy. Every single evaluator, they caught it, said, okay, you lost your spot, you caught yourself, boom, moved on, everything went fine. I want to bring to you a concept that we use in the Air Force, specifically fighter planes, called HUD, H-U-D. Would you see it in your textbook? Heads-up display. Does anybody know what that is?
Yes.
A couple people do, some don't. When you're a combat pilot, you have to think about killing other people, but you also have to fly the plane. Multitasking, you have to do both. What the Air Force came up with, and what all branch of the service used, is something called a heads-up display. What that means is the entire control panel that the pilot has is reflected onto the canopy, which is a screen for which the pilot looks out. So that way he sees his attitude indicator, he sees his turn bank indicator, he sees all his controls while he's killing people. Well, let's just say fighting people, defending people, but that's actually what he's doing. I tried to adopt that into Toastmaster speech or any speech that you have. For all of you, show of hands, the last speech you gave, did you practice the speech total for more than an hour? Did you spend more than an hour doing the speech over? Maybe 5-minute speech, more than an hour. Okay, that's about a third to half of the room. Do you have a tendency to practice the speech in a monotonous situation? For myself, when I'm swimming laps in the pool and I'm looking at the tiles go by, that's when I do my best work. When I go jogging around my neighborhood and all I see is trees, I do my best work. Not when I'm riding my bicycle, because I have a tendency to crash it. I don't want to do that. What I do is
you wear a helmet at least.
Excuse me?
You wear a helmet at least, I hope.
At the very least, yeah. Protect the flogging on the noggin. What I do is I work towards a heads-up display. I go over the speech so many times, and in some ways I start out with a Word document. It gets shorter and shorter and shorter until I have an outline. And the outline is so structured that I've got it memorized in my head, that although I'm making contact with your eyes, when I look straight out to that picture at the back of the room, I could see the outline, which is right here, that I put together. I can actually see that outline. It's like, oh, that's the part I was going to say this, and then I was going to say this, and then Have you ever taken an exam, either in high school or in college, where you were asked a question, and you read the question and thought, I know the answer. It was on page 37. It was the second paragraph down, and it was over to the right-hand side. I see a lot of heads nodding, because you are so in tune with the information on there that you know exactly where it was. And that's what I'd like you to try and do for your next speech if you feel the need to have a security blanket in the form of a Word document. Get that whole outline together, and you will see it. You'll see the points on it. I gave a speech once on the, I don't know, say joys or not so great joys of dating. And part of the speech was the crazy things women do and the crazy things guys do. So when I looked out, I could see my opening, my intro, the funny point, and then the 3 key things that women did that are funny. And over on the other side, I could picture the 3 funny things that guys do, the almost serious sum up, which kind of made people think and feel, and then close with humor, and I could see all of that as I'm looking at the speech. And it works that way. Does that sound like anything that would be helpful to you for some people who maybe have that security blanket issue with a document? It's great. And then to go through this, I want to bring up the point of handling sensitive topics. Sometimes people will have a sensitive topic, for lack of a better term, I say the starving child topic. Some trauma, some emotional thing that's going to make you feel a certain way. One of 2 things happens in those speeches. I've seen people let the speech try and carry itself. Oh, it's the tragic incident. Oh, think and feel. And they just go through the motions. Other times I see people really deliver. And for those of you who stay for the contest tonight, just a hint of a preview what's going to happen. You're going to see somebody give a sensitive topic speech and do it phenomenally. I've seen him do it twice now. He's going to do it tonight. It's a sensitive, soft topic. It's going to make you think. It's going to make you feel. But he handles it properly, which is why he got to the conference level for a competition of that nature. There's a few things that I want to talk to you about with regards to creating speeches. For those of you who've been in Toastmasters a while, who's above or past CC level? Do people come up and ask you, hey, I don't have any ideas for a speech? You get that? It just hurts me when somebody who's done 2 speeches and they sound pretty good and they're working on the 3rd and they come up and say, how can I get the topics, or how can I have an opening like you? There's so much out there, and I'm going to talk to you a couple things about how to create a speech. If you're starting to get writer's block, or talker's block in this case. When somebody comes up and says to me, I'm out of ideas, I want to talk to Andy. I say, okay, where'd you go to school? University such and such. There's a speech. Oh yeah, I get. Well, people don't want to, yeah, we do want to hear about where, we do want to hear what you study and how some series of events in life got you to this point. What's the farthest you ever traveled away from your home? Oh, I was on the Peace Corps in Turkey. Okay, well, we'd like to hear about that. What's the greatest vacation you ever went on? Oh, I went scuba diving in the Florida Keys. Okay, here we are. We're just starting one right after another. We're building on these speeches. From there, you may not have gone to Turkey. You may not have gone scuba diving. You may not have made it to Hawaii. But there's other ways that you can create speeches, and I call that by volunteering. Now, this is a whole other topic. So if this speech were a DVD, we're hitting the added topics key. I've gotten some good speeches out of volunteering, specifically with the Challenged Athletes Foundation. Also, I'm an avid runner. So I've gotten speeches out of running competitions I've been in because pretty much every single run is a charitable event. And I encourage you to go out and try doing that. Be part of a charitable event, be a runner. If you can't run, then do the race as a walker. If you can't do the race as a walker, then volunteer to be a marshal at the race to sign people in. You will have some incredible experiences. How many people here know Joe Whalen? You met him at lunch, so raise your hand. He's here today, 2013 Toastmaster of the Year for District 53. Admittedly, he says he's an average speaker. I think he's a very good speaker. But what he did was he volunteers with this guy, Mike Zurich, who comes out to see us every summer, who's blind. He's been blind his whole life. Joe runs with him on road races. Mike Zurich has been blind his whole life. He's run marathons. He wrestled in high school and wrestled at a college level for the NCAA. And Joe takes the time out of his schedule. He's got a family. And Joe, when you see him downstairs, Joe's doing everything here and hardly gets credit for it. Takes the time to run with blind people. Got to run arm in arm. I've done the same thing with Mike. It's got a little sweaty arm in arm. But Joe's putting a speech together about that. These things make it such a wonderful experience. I had the great experience of going to the Challenge Athletes fundraiser down at the Waldorf Astoria a couple of years ago. I met this dapper young fellow, Cody Caslin, who doesn't have legs, but he's got prosthetics. And I did a speech on going to the fundraiser. This kid is incredible. We're going to take another side topic here. He's 8 years old and he has a job. You know his job is? He goes to veterans hospitals and teaches the veterans to be brave. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
There's a great number of quotes that are out there, and we heard some today, and one that really hit home to me, really great, is Coach Jim Valvano, who coached NC State to a national championship in college basketball. He did this a number of years ago. It was one of the greatest mismatches in the tournament history, and they won the championship. He gave a speech, and he said, well, as Toastmasters, we're not supposed to talk about God, but we will just for a moment. He said, God loves ordinary people. That's why he made so many of us. And every single day, ordinary people are doing extraordinary things. I just thought that was so wonderful. Ordinary people who aren't going to be in the ESPN top 10. They're not going to have million-dollar contracts. They're not going to be in the cover of People magazine, but they're out there every single day doing these things. From here, from what you gathered, hopefully it was helpful, but I would like you to go out there and create a speech. Volunteer. When you volunteer, more times than not, the work you do, you're getting more internally. But I want you to go out there. I want you to be the next ordinary person doing something extraordinary. And then I want you to come back and tell us about it in 5 to 7 minutes. How does that sound?
Okay.
Thank you so much for being a part of this. We'll bring it a little shorter because of what happened. Any comments, input, questions?